Hey, church, I'm Clark,
And I'm Chris.
and we're going to be doing our devotional this week for Luke 24:13 through 35, which is known as the story of the road to Emmaus. And if I know anything about this story, I know that it is one of Chris Stewart's favorite stories. He teaches on it all the time with our middle schoolers. He talks about it all the time. And so I'm going to let him go first and tell you about why he loves this story in Luke so much.
I do love this story, and I just want to point out that you use the word all twice in that paragraph there,
All
and
the
that's very
time.
Pauline of you. Paul loves the word all, and I love
Hyperbole.
this story. It is one of my favorites. I don't know exactly why. I think that because it is Jesus walking down. I see myself in this story, walking down the road with him, not recognizing him speaking truth into me, my heart burning, still not recognizing him. And then the Cleopas and this other unnamed disciple continue down the road. They come to the house, Jesus, stay with us, stay with us. And then he breaks bread. All of a sudden their eyes are opened and they're like, what? It was him. And he disappears. What did that look like? What really happened there? He disappears from their sight. And then they go sprinting back to Jerusalem, the 7 miles back to Jerusalem. They're like, we saw him. And everybody else is like, we saw him too. And everybody's like, ah. And so it lots of enthusiasm. And that's how I feel with Jesus. I trust that he's walking with me. And I get, they were down, they were sad at the state of things. And it took Jesus to open their eyes and say, why are you so downcast? Don't you know that I'm right here? I'm right with you. And so beautiful story. Love it. What'd you get out of it, Clive?
Well, and I love what they're the two disciples, and I think one of them being unnamed really invites us to step into that disciple's shoe and be the one who walks around with him, although he'd probably step into his sandals back then. But anyways, what really stood out to me is in verse 16, when it says their eyes were kept from recognizing him. There's some versions that say their eyes were prevented from seeing him. And that stands out to me. Like, they're prevented from seeing him, but actually that's super common in all of the resurrection stories. When Mary goes to the tomb and Jesus is there, she thinks he's the gardener. And then later in this, if you keep on reading,
he says her name,
and then she recognizes him. Yep. And then the disciples later in this story, if you go past verses 35, they are frightened when he enters the room. They think it's a ghost. They're pretty much scared out of their minds, which is probably part of why he says, peace be with you, because you can see that they're terrified. And then in John 21, when all the disciples are out fishing, they don't recognize him at first either, until John says to Peter, hey, Peter, it's the Lord. And he's like, what? And he goes, and so I think there's a bunch of things.
Puts his clothes on and jumps in the water.
He has to get on his clothes in for some reason. Who knows what Peter was thinking? But there's this crazy, like, is it God who's preventing them from seeing it? Is it Jesus hiding himself? I don't know. Is it us just being unable to see him? I think maybe it's a little bit of both going on there. And I think we can see in these stories some reasons why they were unable to really see the Lord. There's grief going on, right? I mean, Cleopas, and they're like, we had hoped that he was the one. They are just, they're devastated, right? We're lucky that we get to be on the side of, we know Jesus is raised. We're on that. They didn't know that. They are devastated. Their hopes are gone. They're grieving. They're scared, right? All of these things are working together to kind of prevent them from seeing God. But so I think that's the question we have to have for ourselves, is what is preventing us from seeing Jesus, right? Is it our anxiety? Are we just so worried about everything else going on in our lives? Are we so distracted, like the guys out fishing, that they're just focused on their fishing and they don't stop and be like, oh, hey, the Lord is there. or these guys they're just so sad and stuck in their own sadness that they won't see the Lord. What's keeping us from seeing the Lord? And so what I see in this story is a process of Jesus saying, hey, I'm still here. And it starts by him just coming and talking to them. So are we doing that? Are we just stopping and talking to the Lord? Are we praying? Are we spending time in conversation with him? Are we listening to his word? Right? It says that he began with Moses and interpreted all the scriptures to them, which would be awesome if they went into more detail about that, but Luke doesn't. So, but are we listening to his word? They invite him into their home, right? He's about to go on. Jesus is about to walk past them. They invite him in. They break bread together, and then their eyes are opened. So I think that there's a lot of similarities to us that we can be doing this week. It can be talking to him about our fears, about our absolutely hating being stuck inside, absolutely just despising this time in our lives. We can be honest with him and talk about that. We need to be listening to his word, right? Their hearts burned inside them when they heard it, his word. We also need to be inviting them in, and we still need to be breaking bread together. Although that's hard about being in a church setting, we have our families to be breaking bread with. Jesus reveals himself in that. So that's kind of what I get out of this. What's preventing us from seeing Jesus? Identify that and try to see where Jesus is at in our lives, because he's there. But sometimes we're just not seeing it.
Yeah, and praying. I mean, there's some of that's on me, and I need to look in and what's preventing me, and some of it is, Lord, open my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I love Psalm 119, verse 18. Open my eyes that I might see wonders coming out of your word.
Yeah.
So, Lord, some of it's on me, but I can't do it. Would you show up and open my eyes?
That's a good
Stuff.
word. All right. Well, that's what we've got for you this week, church. Hope that you get to spend some time in the Word, spend some time with your families, break bread together, and remember what Jesus has done for us this week.
Amen.
Amen. Have a good week.